So we're going to start our discussion on writing array methods, or methods that use arrays, with two very common methods that are used. They're so common that you probably eventually won't even need to write a method for them, but they're fairly straightforward. Let's go ahead and write a method that will take in an array of integers and produce their sum. Okay? So for instance, if I'm given, it's a method where if I'm given the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I would like to calculate their sum, which would be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So that'd be 6 plus 4 plus 5, so 15, right? Should output 15. If I'm given 100, 200, and 300, this should give me, well, 340. Then this should give me 640, right? It's just the sum, nothing too advanced going on here, right? Now, so again, this is a method, right? We've learned that methods, for the most part, will start out with public static, and that's all we've learned so far. And then we have the return type, right? Well, what's the return type? The sum of a bunch of numbers. If we're adding a bunch of integers together, then it should result in a single integer. Okay. What about a name? Well, we'll go ahead and call it sum. Okay. And so now the question is, what does this take in as a parameter? So it takes in an array, I said. So we're going to go ahead and say this takes in an array of integers, and we're going to call that array of integers R in this method. Okay? So now what we need to do is why it's giving me an error. Why is it giving me an error? Because I'm promising right here to return an integer. And so if I don't return an integer here, it's quite upset. So right now I'm going to say return -1. Obviously, this is not necessarily what everything is going to add up to, right? But it allows me to write sort of this stub and then basically hook it into my test. So I'm going to go ahead and write my test first, right? So let's go ahead and create our integer array. Int r is equal to, let's go ahead, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And what we'll say is, we'll say that int total is equal to sum of array. And then we'll go ahead and print. And this is a very, very basic way of testing. We'll say expected 15, expected 15, and we'll go ahead and give it 2 tabs, or we'll give it a tab here, and then we'll go ahead and write sout got, and another tab over here, and let's go ahead and print and do print out total. Right, so our expectations versus reality. So if we run this, it should print out expected 15, got -1. It's not lined up because got is so short, so short. So let's put in another tab to line it up. Expected 15, got -1. Fairly straightforward there. So, right, it's -1 because we just told it to return -1. So let's actually add stuff up. Int sum is equal to 0. So we're going to do a running sum here. Now, how does this know that I'm not actually like trying to do sum as a method over here? Why I'm not trying to, there's a, I've got a sum variable over here and a sum method and something called sum as a method name. How does it know the difference? Well, it knows that if there's parentheses after a name, then it's a method. And if there's not, then it's a variable. That's how it can tell. So that's why I'm able to use the variable name sum over here. So obviously we'll add up, sum will start at 0, and we're going to return the sum. And what we're going to say is for int I is equal to 0, I is less than array.length, right? Because we want to go over all the valid indices in the array. So this will give me all the valid indices in the array. Well, first, let's get... So now that for each number, what are we going to do? we are going to, or rather for each index, what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and get the number at that index. That's what this statement does. We are going to get the number at r of I. So first we're going to get the number 0, number at index 0, then the number at index 1, then the number at index 2. Then we actually have to do something with it. What we'll do with it is we'll do num plus equals, or rather we'll do sum plus equals num, which is the same as saying sum is equal to sum plus num. So in other words, we'll take the value in sum, add it to number, and store that in number. So we'll add each thing one at a time. So now if we run this, expected 15, got 15. Let's go ahead and look at another method. So let's go ahead and write another one that we really can't do without arrays. Public static int average. Actually, we should probably do this as a double, right? Average. And this will take an array of integers. Why are we doing this as a double? Because some averages are not whole numbers. That's why. So first thing we'll do is that we're going to do this the easy way, and then we're going to do this the hard way first, and then the easy way. So how do we compute an average? We add up all the numbers, and then we divide by the numbers of by however many numbers we added up. So this is going to get. I'm going to solve this and do it progressively shorter each time I solve it. So public static. So first let's do an int total, because we need to sum up all the numbers, is equal to 0. Int count, which will count up how many numbers we've added to total so far. And what do we need to do? In the end, we need to return total divided by count, right? The total number of numbers divided by the count of the numbers. Okay? So what do? We will do, and actually there's a small mistake there, which I will get to when we run this finally. So what we do for int I is equal to 0, I is less than r.length. In other words, while there for each valid index is from 0 to array.length. So if there's 10 numbers, it would be from 0 to 9 inclusive, or 0 up to but not including 10. I plus plus. And now let's go ahead and let's go ahead and say total is equal to so actually I'm going to make this as verbose as possible, and then I'm going to start shrinking it. Array of I is equal to, we're going to get the number out of array of I, put it in num, and then say total is equal to total plus equals to num. Right, so we're going to increase the total by that number, and then we're going to increment the count by 1. Okay. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run average. Right, first off, it wants a double back, so we have to turn total into it. Let's go ahead and actually make a new variable. Double av is equal to average of array. So let's go ahead and the average of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 should be 3.0. So we'll just go ahead and print that out here, and got 3.0. So why did I say it's gonna mess up a bit? Well, let's go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and see. If my app total is, say, something like this. Let's go ahead and say my array is something like this. -1, -1, -1, 3, and 0. sorry, that should average out to 0. So let's go ahead and say, there we go. And notice we got 0.0. So what is the average of this? This is -1, -1, -1, 3, and 1, right? So the average of that will be whatever -1, -1, -1, 3 is. So that comes to 0. Plus 1 gives us, so this sums up to 1, divided by 5. 1 divided by 5, though, in Java is 0, right? Using when we go over integer division. Even though we're returning a double, what we're doing is an integer divided by integer. And so it only becomes a double after we return it. So to fix this, we need to basically say, hey, one of these needs to be actually a double. And we can just do that by either changing 1 to a double or multiplying by 1.0 somewhere. There we go. Probably easier, though, if we go ahead and just change this to a double so we don't have to worry about that. So remember when you're interacting with doubles and ints that's a possibility. Okay, now let's go ahead and make this more concise. So first off, count is actually irrelevant. We don't actually ever need count because we already know how many items we're going to be adding together. It's the length of the array. However many numbers are in the array are the number we're going to add together. So that makes that fairly simple. Furthermore, we can totally just, we don't need 2 statements over here to add that to the total. We don't have to store array sub I in a temporary variable. We can just directly add it. So total plus equals I. So that makes it even shorter. And we can do the same up here if we wanted to. I just simply broke it into 2 statements because that's simpler. When you're first learning about it. All right, but last, total. What we're doing to calculate total is just simply redoing everything that we've already done over here. It's kind of a waste of space. And that's the beauty of methods. What we can do is actually just delete all this. And since we already did the work to figure out how to add stuff together, we can just simply say, oh, the average is equal to the sum of the array divided by the array.length. And here, of course, we get into the issue again where we're just going to have to multiply by 1.0, but we add everything together, multiply it by 1.0 to turn it into a double, and then divide by the array.length. So that makes it a lot easier to handle.